Sutras of our Lord Sri Aurobindo. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, our tasks are given. We are but instruments. Nothing is all our own that we create. The power that acts in us is not our force. With always our love and blessings, says our Lord Sri Aurobindo. Sri Aurobindo's Savitri, Book 4, The Book of Birth and Quest, Canto 4, The Quest, page 433. The seers attuned to the universal will, content in Him who smiles behind earth's forms, abode ungrieved by the insistent days. About them, like green trees girdling a hill, young great disciples, fashioned by their touch, trained to the simple act and conscious word, greatened within and grew to meet their heights. Far wandering seekers on the Eternal's path brought to these quiet founts their spirits' thirst, and spent the treasure of a silent hour, bathed in the purity of the mild gaze that uninsistent ruled them from its peace, and by its influence found the ways of calm. The infants of the monarchy of the worlds, the heroic leaders of a coming time, king children nurtured in that spacious air, like lions gambolling in sky and sun, received half-consciously their god-like stamp. Formed in the type of the high thoughts they sang, they learned the wide magnificence of mood that makes us comrades of the cosmic urge, no longer chained to their small separate selves, plastic and firm beneath the eternal hand, met nature with a bold and friendly clasp, and served in her the power that shapes her works. One soul to all, and free from narrowing bounds, large like a continent of warm sunshine, in wide equality's impartial joy, these sages breathed for God's delight in things. Words of our Lord Sri Aurobindo. taken from the collective works of our Lord Aurobindo book, The Mother with Letters. Topic: The Mother's Grace. Question: do calm and equality come down from above by the Mother's grace? For this our Lord says, when they descend, it is by the soul's aspiration and the Mother's grace. The Mother's grace is there always. Open yourself to it in quietude and confidence. Question: I don't feel Mother's grace as before. Sometimes I get the suggestion that I'm not fit for her service and for yoga. For this, our Lord Aurobindo says, what is all this nonsense? The grace of the Mother does not withdraw. Open yourself and you will feel it. The presence whose fading he regrets can only be felt if the inner being continues to be consecrated and the outer nature is put into harmony, or at least kept under the touch of the inner spirit. If he does things which his inner being does not approve, this condition will be inevitably tarnished, and each time the possibility of his feeling the presence will diminish. He must have a strong will to purification and an aspiration that does not flag and cease if the Mother's grace is to be there and effective. To practice yoga implies the will to overcome all attachments and turn to the divine alone. The principal thing in the integral yoga is to trust in the divine's grace at every step, to direct the thought continuously to the divine and to offer oneself till the being opens and the Mother's force can be felt working within. Question: when a sadhak feels the Mother's grace coming down in him, is it by the consent of the Purusha in him? For this, our Lord Aurobindo says, what do you mean by consent? The Mother's grace comes down by Mother's will. The Purusha can accept or reject the grace. How to receive what the Mother gives generally? For this, our Lord Aurobindo says, you have to keep yourself open, and whatever you need and can receive at the moment will come. Our Lord Aurobindo says, if the sadhaks had been different in their reaction to the Mother's grace, the work in the physical world would have been much easier and less perilous, subject to hostile forces. Perhaps it would have been done by now. Our Lord Aurobindo says, make yourself quiet. Make yourself quiet and open. Have a complete confidence in the Divine Mother, and you will feel the Mother's presence within you. It is by the constant remembrance that the being is prepared for the full opening. By the opening of the heart, the Mother's presence begins to be felt, and by the opening to her power, above the force of the higher consciousness comes down into the body and works there to change the whole nature. Question: the Mother says, keep yourself always open to me. I'm always with you, in you, around you. How am I to feel her presence always? Also, what does conscious mean? How does one become conscious? For this, our Lord Aurobindo says, the Divine Mother is everywhere and at all times she is with you. If one opens and becomes conscious, then one can feel her presence. It is because the nature is ignorant, full of itself and its desires, one cannot feel the presence. If one turns from self and desires and lives inwardly and outwardly for the divine, then one begins to feel the divine presence. Our Lord Aurobindo says, keep That sincere opening always, eventually, a state of peace and joy, and the sense of the mother's presence will become permanent. My dear mother, peace in my vital. My dear mother, peace in my vital, peace in my heart, peace everywhere. Let the vital and the heart open always to the mother's presence, the true force, the true source of peace. She is always present. Question: why do I sometimes feel myself far from the mother? I want to be able to feel her constantly with me. For this, our Lord Sri Aurobindo says the mother is always there with you. You have only to throw away the forces of ignorance to feel her with you always. Question: you have said always behave as if the mother was looking at you because she is indeed always present. Does this mean that the mother knows all my insignificant thoughts at all times or only when she concentrates? For this, our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, it is said that the mother is always present at you, looking at you. That doesn't mean that in her physical mind she is thinking of you always and seeing your thoughts. There is no need for that. Since she is everywhere, acts everywhere out of her universal knowledge. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, the mother is always with you. Put your faith in her. Remain quiet within and do with that certitude what has to be done. You will become more and more aware of her constant presence, will feel her action behind yours, and the burden of your work will no longer be heavy on you. Sometimes the thought comes to me, says the child, outwardly and inwardly, I am very far from the mother. Why does it come? For this, our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, it is the feeling of the physical or the outward being which is by its ignorance unable to feel the mother's nearness. How can I convince myself of the falsity of the thought and drive it away? For this, our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, the mother is always near and within. It is only the obscurity of the mind and vital that do not see or feel it. This is a knowledge which the mind ought not to hold firmly. That is a knowledge which the mind ought to hold firmly. Next subtopic, feeling the mother's presence. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, live always as if you were under the very eye of the Supreme and of the Divine Mother. Do nothing, try to think and feel nothing that would be unworthy of the divine presence. The constant presence of the Divine Mother comes by practice. The divine grace is essential for success in sadhana, but it is the practice that prepares the descent of the grace. You have to learn to go inward, ceasing to live in external things only. Quiet the mind, aspire to become aware of the mother's workings in you. Question: how and when can one feel the mother's concrete presence all the time? For this, our Lord Sri Aurobindo says it is a matter, first, of the constant activity of the psychic, and secondly, of the conversion of the physical and its openness to inner supraphysical experience. Apart from the vital and its disturbances, the physical is the chief difficulty in establishing a continuity of yogic consciousness and experience. If the physical is thoroughly transformed, opened and conscious, then stability and continuity becomes easy. We believe that it is the mother who does the sadhana in us, but we scarcely feel it. I suppose there must be some wheel in us. For this, our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, it is a wheel which disappears when the mother's working as well as her presence is consciously felt at all times. Question: is there any difference between the mother's presence and the divine consciousness? For this, our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, one can feel the divine consciousness impersonally as a new consciousness only. The mother's presence is something more. One feels herself there present within or above or enveloping one or all these together. The feeling of the mother's presence or nearness does not depend on whether you write or you do not write. You seldom feel her, always close. One can feel the divine consciousness as an impersonal spiritual state, a state of light, a state of peace, joy, wideness, without feeling in it the divine presence. The divine presence is felt as that of one who is the living source, the essence of that light, a being, therefore, not merely a spiritual state. The mother's presence is still more concrete, definite, personal. It is not that of someone unknown, of a power or being, but of one who is known, intimate, love, to whom one can offer all the being in a living, concrete way. What stands in the way is the recurring circle of the old mixture. To break out of that is very necessary to arrive at an inner yogic calm and peace, not disturbed by these things. If that is established, it will be possible to feel in it the mother's presence, to open to her guidance, to get not by occasional glimpses, but in a steady opening and flowering, the psychic perception and the descent of the spiritual light and ananda. For that, help will be with you. It is quite right and part of the right consciousness in the sadhana that you should feel drawn in your heart towards the mother and aspire for the vision and realization of her presence. But there should not be any kind of restlessness joined to this feeling. The feeling should be quietly intense. It will then be easier for the sense of the presence to come and grow in you. What you feel coming is the true consciousness with the presence and action of the mother. It is the mother's touch that you feel upon you that indicates her presence. In the state of consciousness, it is the force working on the system which brings what is needed or aspired to, peace or light or happiness, and the psychic opening. Peace, quiet, followed by a happy state and a psychic opening is what you need. Let that grow always, says our Lord, Sri Aurobindo.
Du silence et de l'ombre brûle la lampe qui ne s'éteint point, le feu de l'ardente aspiration, te connaître et te vivre intégralement. In the heart of the shadow, in the bosom of the silence, burns the lamp that can never be extinguished, the fire of an ardent aspiration to know thee and totally to live thee.
Prayers and Meditations, July 21st, 1913. Translated by Sri Aurobindo or revised and published under his guidance. Yet, what patience is needed! How imperceptible the stages of progress! Oh, how I call thee from the very depths of my heart. True light, sublime love, divine master, who art the source of our light and of our living, our guide and our protector, the soul of our soul and the life of our life, the reason of our being, the supreme knowledge, the immutable peace.